All right. Bit of a departure from my normal content. I don't normally talk about movies. But I just finished the fourth, God's Not Dead. And I can't help but draw a lot of parallels, naturally, because they are based on actual court cases and actual events. But if you look at the movies, specifically look at the second and third, the second movie where the teacher was asked a question and answered. And as a student of history myself, if I were teaching in a middle or high school class, teaching history, world history, and I was asked about the person of Jesus Christ, I would cite people like Josephus and others. And I would say, yes, he did exist. And if they asked about his teachings, I would answer. I would not be proselytizing. I would be answering a student's question. And in the case that inspired that, a student asked a question, the teacher answered, and the teacher was fired and taken to court. In the third, Reverend David Hill, played by David A.R. White, was jailed for not submitting his proposed sermons for approval, or, as the government likes to say, to ensure they are not hate speech. This last one, God's Not Dead, We the People, has a group of homeschool parents with Reverend Hill going before a congressional subcommittee which seeks to uphold that the government should be the only voice and the only person or entity when it comes to education. But I want to point out one thing before I go into my own thoughts here. If you'll notice in these, the anger, the vehemence, the violence comes from the non-Christians. You look at the second movie while these students and others are simply sitting on the court steps while Grace Wesley is fighting for her job. Who is screaming at who? You look at the third where Reverend Hill's church is burned to the ground, almost. And who's the one group screaming and yelling and hurling insults? It's those who don't want it rebuilt. Who are the angry ones in the first movie? Well, it's Sorbo's character and Dean Cain's character, the non-Christian characters, angry at the Christians. And if you look at the fourth, it's those on the congressional subcommittee who wish to maintain and solidify and gain power. I've said for many, many months now, and probably longer, I firmly believe we are in the end of days, and that I firmly believe that my parents' generation and my generation will see the conclusion of this portion of human history. We know that in the end of days, it will be as in the days of Noah. The way I describe it normally is depravity, debauchery, and debasement is everywhere, and it is praised as good. When hate becomes truth, truth becomes hate. But that's precisely the point of the animosity against Christians. Those who wish to remove God from every aspect of life that they can wish for truth to become completely subjective and relative to the person that wants to define it. There is simple truth. Biologically, I am a human. Not canine, feline, porcine, bovine, equine. None of those things. I'm human. Homo sapien. Thinking man. No matter how much I tell you that I'm actually a chimpanzee or Homo habilis, I'm not. There are those who wish to say that Christianity is anti-science. It isn't. If you look back at the founders of this country, they were not rich, old white men. They were 30 and younger. Yes, some owned slaves, but quite a few did not. and they enshrined in the Bill of Rights and in the Declaration and in the Constitution that this country was founded on the premise that all men are created equal. That started the fight right there that a mere 80 years later would see a civil war and the total abolition of slavery in this country. Slavery still exists on this planet. Human trafficking is a disease and an epidemic. But no one wants to talk about that. They want to blame Christians for everything. One of the lines in this movie was, in a test on physics, acceleration deceleration rates are not based only on whatever God says it is. No, they are clearly calculable. We go back to Galileo and others. They were men of faith. They understood God gave us a mind and an ability to think and reason. If you ask me what the atomic weight of an element is, I go to the periodic table and I tell you what its atomic weight is. That is absolute truth. It has been studied and measured. If you ask me what H2O is, well, it's 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom, which forms water. It's that simple. Now, the truth of those things are, and always will be, that God designed them that way. But we have exactly calculated and measured all of those. We know that an object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. Matter can be neither created nor destroyed by us. That without time and space you cannot have matter. Without time and matter you cannot have space. And without space and matter you cannot have time. And Genesis 1:1 clearly shows the creation of all three of those. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Time, space, matter. They all came into being at the exact same moment when God spoke it into being. There is an old meme, if you will. It says, I believe in the Big Bang. God spoke and bang, there it was. Until any of us are standing before the God of the universe, none of us will be able to even fathom what actually occurred when God spoke. And when we are, it won't matter to any of us. The simple truth of the matter is Christianity is under attack. A news story came across my feed earlier that there was already a school creating an after-school Satan club. And of course, there's no pushback from the liberal left and from the socialists and the globalists and the progressives. They're just exercising their beliefs. But if a pastor, on his own, without telling anyone, without asking anyone, without doing anything other than walking to the 50-yard line to silently pray on his own, if he does that, he gets fired because someone misconstrues that others joined him as he forced them. And when they all testify that he didn't even tell them what he was doing, they accuse them of lying or of being misled. I think I'll close with this. One of the greatest lines from the first God's Not Dead movie. At the end of all things in that movie, at the end of all of the debates over the semester between the young man and Sorbo's character, he pushes. And finally at one point he just goes, do you hate God? And Sorbo's character goes, yes, I hate him. And he simply looks at him and goes, how do you hate someone who you say does not exist? Why is it so imperative to all of the non-Christians of the world that Christians give up, betray, and deny our faith? I'm not forcing my faith on anyone, and I never would. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to deny it. I let myself be distracted too long. And when I shunned and I got rid of all the distraction and I started truly showing and embodying my faith, it cost me a job. But God held me through all of it. Why is it so important to the world that Christians give up their faith? The answer is simple. Satan knows his time is short. He knows the end is coming, and he knows who wins. And he knows it's not him. And as the selfish being that he is just determined to drag as many people as he can to hell with him, because if he cannot go to heaven, he'll deny it to as many as possible. so that in some deep part of his black heart, he can at least say, well, at least they didn't get to go either. It's the mindset of a toddler who knocks an ice cream cone out of his sibling's hand because his own fell on the ground. If I can't have ice cream, no one can. I will not betray my faith. I will not deny my faith. I will not hide my faith. And my believing and exercising and refusing to hide my faith does not force anything on you. If you don't wish to hear it, you're free to not watch my videos, to not interact with me. If I meet you in real life and you don't want to talk to me about faith, you are free to walk away or tell me to walk away. But you are not free to tell me I am required to be silent. And that is the point of all of the God's Not Dead movies. The young student in the first who would not write God is dead on his paper. The young teacher in the second who would not say that she was wrong when answering a question about Christ. The pastor in the third who would not bow to the government and beg for his sermons to be approved. And the homeschool families in the last who would not bow to the government and say, we will betray our faith and let our children be taught everything you wish, which is counter to our faith. It's very simple. What a man sows, so shall he reap. You sow of the flesh, you reap nothing but despair, degradation. You sow of the Spirit, you reap eternity. I know which I prefer. As always, let me know what you think. Just remember the rule. The comments are for a civil, logic-based adult discussion. We can discuss, debate all we want, but when you start acting like a toddler, denied ice cream for breakfast, I will no longer engage. As always, please subscribe, turn on notifications. You don't know when I'm going to post. I don't know when I'm going to post. And as always, may God bless you and keep you.